I'm Denton Davidson for Gold Derby, here with Trevor Frost and Melissa Lesh, directors of the Amazon Prime documentary Wildcat. It's about a British soldier who's back from the war in Afghanistan and is struggling with depression and PTSD. And he finds a second chance in the Amazon rainforest when he meets an American scientist and helps rehabilitate a baby ocelot, which is of course a wildcat, hence the name. But Harry, the British soldier, he's a bit of a wildcat. I mean, he describes himself as that as well. So I'm curious to know how you two became aware of Harry and Samantha and the work that they were doing in the rainforest.
Yeah, I was a still photographer before making this film. I did a lot of work for National Geographic over the last decade, and I was looking for a new story for National Geographic magazine, and I was down in Peru looking for anacondas with a team of researchers, local and international researchers. And we were there for 60 days, and we weren't finding any anacondas. In fact, we only found 2 anacondas at the very end of that entire trip. So I spent a lot more time than I care to admit in town, sort of re-strategizing, trying to figure out how we were going to find anacondas. And I was sitting in a hotel lobby, and Harry walked by, and he's covered in tattoos, and he didn't have a shirt on when he walked by. So I saw all of his tattoos, and my friend that was sitting next to me, who was working on the Anaconda project, leaned over and said, "Did you see that young man with the tattoos? His name's Harry. You'll never believe his story." And you hear that a lot, so you never know what to believe. But then a few days later, I had the chance to meet Harry and Samantha together at that same hotel, and they brought a hard drive with them. And on that hard drive was tons of footage that they had filmed themselves with an ocelot named Khan. And I was blown away by how incredible the footage was, by what they managed to film. That when they turned the camera on, when most people would turn the camera off. So I immediately called Melissa on my satellite phone and said, there's this unbelievable story. And then it was about a month later that Samantha called us. We were back in the United States, or I was back in the United States, and Samantha called us and said that they had just rescued a second ocelot named Keanu.
Yeah, we don't want to give too much away. I don't know exactly when this is coming out. But yeah, at that moment, and Trevor came back, with the hard drive. I think what was really critical about that early moment when he met Harry and Samantha, they had already talked to other potential stations and other kind of cinematographers, other filmmakers of doing different pieces with that footage. And none of it ever felt right. And it was really them, meeting Trevor, connecting on a deep level, which we can get into, Harry and Trevor specifically, why they connected so deeply, saw kind of our method of filmmaking, our backgrounds in conservation storytelling, and entrusted us to tell this story, and really wanted to work deeply as collaborators. So from day one, it was, we were all equal collaborative partners in telling the story, and it was their story as much as ours. And yeah, when Keanu came along, it was now we have, the chance to kind of follow this in real time. This is a second chance. This is a redemption. So it was the beginning of about 13 trips back and forth from Virginia to the Peruvian Amazon over the next year and a half.
So that early footage was primarily captured by Harry himself, which is pretty incredible. What he was able to, what both of them film of themselves. And then a lot of this stuff with Keanu is when you take your film crew in. Is that, how did you blend those together? What was the process like for that?
Yeah. So one of the things that was really clear and very important to them right from the beginning was that no one had access to the cat. That was a part of their reintroduction protocol to make him as wild as possible. They didn't want anyone, including us, the closest people coming down there quite often, to have access to him. And so that became, at first a really big challenge. How do you make us, tell this story of reintroduction when you can't film the cat, that they're working with. And so because of the footage with Khan that we saw, and knowing just their innate ability with the camera, and also just their comfort in front of the camera, it became clear that, they can be critical collaborators in helping document this process. And the camera crew was really just Trevor and myself. It was the 4 of us making this movie, living on a little platform together in the middle of the rainforest. There was no camera crew. You can't have a big crew when you're that far remote in the middle of the rainforest.
Were you surprised by how much they shared of their personal story? I mean, they would put the camera on themselves and really just pour their hearts out. They didn't necessarily have to do that. I mean, this could have been about a cat being rehabilitated into the wild, but Harry and Samantha both give so much of themselves to this. What made them trust you and feel comfortable in doing that?
I think one of the things that immediately started us off on the right track was that when I met Harry, one of the first things that we talked about was my struggle with depression and anxiety. I've struggled with depression and anxiety for over a decade now. And, sometimes it's been a little more severe, but never as severe as Harry's. But I certainly understand what it's like to be in that place where, people often describe depression as sadness, but it's really the wrong way of describing it. It's often this sort of emptiness, this void, and you don't feel anything. And so Harry and I were really able to connect over, struggling with depression, and Samantha and Melissa were able to connect because they both had, childhood trauma in their pasts. And so that helped us, I think, a lot in terms of, connecting and trusting each other. But then the other thing is that the rainforest itself, I think, plays a huge role in that intimacy that you see in the film. What I mean by that is that Melissa referred to this platform that we all lived on, it was 20 by 30 feet. It's a wooden platform. And the four of us are living on this platform. And as a result, there was nowhere for anyone to go. So when something happened, we were always there for it. And that made it an incredibly, it made it basically like we were a family. And so if you were making a film in Chicago, for example, or in Los Angeles or New York City, typically you have to make a decision when to stop filming, right? Because the people that you're filming are going to go home and they're going to go to sleep, and you're eventually going to have to do the same thing. But in this case, because we all lived together on the same platform, we were there for every single moment. And that really allowed an access that I don't think that we would have had otherwise. So I always like to thank the rainforest for that. I think that's the reason that the film is, that you see so much vulnerability from both of them.
And I think just adding on that too, because of the work that they were doing, because of just how remote they were, because, Samantha was traveling back and forth to try and fundraise for the work that they were doing. Harry was there a lot of the time alone. And when you are alone, it can be extremely isolating when the only creature there is to talk to is a cat. And so oftentimes the camera would actually become this companion, and his way of kind of communicating with us. It was like a Wilson, but kind of like a conduit to us as filmmakers and as friends. And, a lot of the kind of early conversations that we had while we were making this film were about, harnessing their ability, and also what do you film? How do you shoot a scene? Because with the Khan archive, it was incredible, but we really knew we needed to dial it in for this longer journey. And so how do you shoot a scene? We introduced the idea of video, daily video diaries. It's what is Keanu eating and learning and growing, and what are you feeling? Let's use the camera as a sort of companion when we're not there. And I think, in many ways, it actually became this sense of purpose also, just in the process of reintroducing Keanu. The making of the movie was also something, keeping him alive.
And there's elements of danger in the jungle, not just environmental dangers, but people are coming in illegally hunting, gun traps, which I hadn't seen before. So they talk about gun traps and how they're set up to hunt these animals. Were they concerned for themselves to be shot? Because these are like landmines just sitting out in the jungle.
Yeah, when Harry was walking with Khan and that shotgun trap went off, Harry was only probably about 6 or 8 feet behind him. So it very easily could have been Harry, or it could have been Samantha if she had been the one walking. But typically those are set. Those typically aren't set on conservation land, and the land that they were on at the time was land that was being protected. but protected areas are often are often infiltrated. People are going into them and trying to set these traps. But one of the things that Samantha and Harry were both always aware of is that people are often just trying to survive, and that was something that both of them. I mean, obviously the loss of Khan was incredibly devastating to both of them, and I would say that they both are still holding on to that grief in a significant way, but they're also both just viscerally aware of the fact that people there are just trying to make a living. They're just trying to survive, and it's really not the people that are living there that are the major concern. That it's usually the much larger players, right? It's like you can always circle back to the corporate conglomerates that run all the cattle farms and the people that are buying the illegal wood and bringing it back to the United States or to Europe to build fancy decks. So that was something that we also, when we made this film, we wanted to craft it very carefully so that we didn't get into that too much. That this was really a personal journey of healing for the two of them, and they found this healing in this remarkable place, the Amazon rainforest.
Well, it's a beautiful documentary, and it shows the parallels of Harry and Keanu, and it's just inspiring to watch. Incredible story. And Trevor and Melissa, congratulations on your film Wildcat, and good luck with everything moving forward.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.